Hey everybody, it's Sal and Sue here, back at the Victory Garden for week 10. Today we are going to just take a look around and see what's happened in the last week. So in the Amory area, this is the week before 4th of July, and we got between 3 and 6 inches of rain over the weekend. So it's been a pretty wet one, and then this week it's also going to be in the high 80s to maybe low 90s for about 7 days. So that is going to take what is already going on here and just make everything just bloom like crazy. So we're going to see where we're at now and kind of predict where we're going to go from here.
Yeah, so I pulled out the rain gauge that we looked at last week. And we're up at 4 inches, so either we got 4 inches or we got more than that and it splashed out. But we filled our rain gauge up, so I'm really psyched that we put it in there because that's fun to see.
Yeah, let's go take a look at what's in the garden.
So first here we got the cucumbers, and we have some tiny little baby cucumbers on here, so that's exciting. Depending on what size you like to eat them, those will be coming in real soon. Our tomatoes, as you can see, we've got the first couple trellised and mulched, but we did not get to the rest of them. You might find in your garden too that you've gotten a little behind on some things, and I'd just like to reassure you that that happens and it's not the end of the world. So we'll just get in here and get these pruned up a little bit and trellised this week, so hopefully next week we can show you perfectly trellised tomatoes. I wanted to point out the basil. So last week Sal mentioned that you could start eating some of these bigger outside leaves, and I just want to point out that this week they're getting so big that they're starting to almost want to think about flowering. So now what you could start doing is you could start cutting out these middle branches. That'll keep them from flowering, and then you can eat this part. And then the side branches will kind of take over and fill in. So the basil is really ready for starting to eat. It's great in a salad or on a sandwich. Let's see, our parsley. Last week Sal was saying it wasn't quite ready to nibble on, but now it for sure is ready to nibble on. So with this you could start pinching off some of these larger outside leaves, and again, salad, sandwiches, whatever. It'll just add a little, freshness to anything. The kale is also doing really well. So as Sal mentioned last week, you could start eating this, but again, I would start taking these bigger outside leaves. You want to leave the inside leaves of the kale so that the plant can keep growing. So just go ahead and start snapping off some of these outer leaves, and you can start eating those. We're starting to get some food in our garden, which is really exciting. So we also have zucchini here. This one, depending on what size you like to eat them. And then the flower here, this whole thing could be eaten. And with the zucchini, I would let this one go for another couple days. But it usually helps to take a knife and just cut right here at the stem where it meets the plant. You can also just twist them off, but then sometimes you break them. But yeah, so this is exciting. We'll have zucchini to eat here in the next couple days. So I just want to point out here, this zucchini, I think this was our very first one, is rotting instead of turning into a fruit. There's a couple reasons that might happen. One of which is we just got all this rain, and it's very low down and it was in contact with the ground, so it might have just gotten too wet. Another thing is that this can just happen with the first fruit of the season on a zucchini. They need to be pollinated, and so if there weren't enough other flowers around, it just might not have been pollinated, and then the fruit will rot. If you see that on your plants, your very first fruit, don't worry about it, but that should go away.
So this is another one of our squash plants. This one is a winter squash, not the zucchini. And so these ones take a little bit longer to mature. If we look in them though, we can start to see some flower buds forming. So this plant should start flowering in the next couple weeks, and then they just take a little bit longer to mature. But this is a really nice, healthy looking bunch of plants. And then behind them we've got our beans that we planted by seed just a short, 4 or so weeks ago. And the beans are also not quite ready, but they are again starting to form some flower buds, or the beginning of flower buds, and pretty soon these are going to be flowering. And as soon as they start flowering, within like a week or so, they're just going to take off, and you're going to need to pick beans maybe a couple times a week. Then back here we've got some more of the plants that we planted by seed. So we've got our beets and carrots, and they are starting to come in and look really, really nice. We've also got some weeds hanging out with them, and we talked about this pigweed before, and just pull that one out. This one, again, you can eat if you want to, if you're feeling adventurous. Got some more of the lamb's quarter, also an edible weed, and pretty easy to pull out. And see, these weeds, this is a really good time to be weeding. So it's not too wet or too dry. It's really in that like Goldilocks zone. So if you come out too soon after a rainstorm and try to weed, it's going to be really muddy, and it's going to be really tough to get the soil off the plant roots. It's all going to be stuck to the plant roots. But you definitely want to be leaving your soil in your garden, because that is, the thing that makes your plants grow. So if it's too dry, then it's just really difficult to weed. I found a lot of times the plants snap off, and so you don't get any of the roots out. So this is really a really nice time. It's really workable soil, so it's really easy to come in and just pull out these weeds, a day or two after it rains. And one more weed that I think we haven't talked about yet is this one over here. And now this is a purslane, and this is actually related to like a decorative plant called a portulaca, but this one is just kind of a common garden weed, and it is also an edible weed. So this one is pretty cool. Some people really like it. They actually sell this. Seed companies sell these seeds, so some people actually grow them intentionally. Otherwise, you could probably just find them, growing in your garden where you don't want them. So these leaves you can pull off and add them to a salad or just snack on. They have just kind of like a lemony, light lemony flavor. And the stems are pretty nice too. They have a little bit of a mucilaginous texture, and again, that little bit of like a tart flavor. And I have actually pickled these before when I just had a really bad infestation of purslane. I just weeded it out and just took all the stems and pickled them, and they were pretty delicious, like a pickled green bean. So there's more than just, the vegetables that you can eat in your garden. Otherwise, you'll want to take this one out before it flowers and goes to seed, or it will seed weeds everywhere. And so here in this last row, we've got some of our, I think this is broccoli or cauliflower. And now these plants are a little bit slower going, so they're not really doing a whole lot except for putting on really nice leafy growth. And as long as your plants are getting big and looking healthy, then this is totally good. But they're just not really doing a whole lot as far as making food yet. And the same with the peppers. So our peppers are putting on a lot of nice bushy leafy growth, and that's what we want to see because they started out so small. And there's some maybe tiny little flower buds forming on a few of them, but again, this is just going to be a little bit longer of a wait, and they'll just keep looking really healthy until they're ready to start making fruits. Alright, and again here with our beets and carrots, they came in and they're just looking really nice and leafy. If you planted things by seed, you might notice that some of them are nice and spaced out, and these plants are going to get big and strong and have plenty of space. But other ones are maybe planted really close where there's two plants almost on top of each other. And so with these ones, for them to grow into a really nice size, we're actually going to be thinning out some of the plants in between. So for example, this one, and you can kind of tease them apart and just see where, this plant, there's one right here, there's a little one right here, another little one right here, and then there's one right here. And so these two are much bigger and stronger and healthier looking. So I'm just gonna go in and just maybe pull out these two smaller ones. And you can thin progressively throughout the season. So if you want to take a few that are really clustered together, wait a little while, and then if you see they're growing together again, you can take out some more. And that also allows you to have some delicious early greens to snack on. So pretty much with your root crops, when you're thinning them, like the whole part of the plant is edible. So these beet leaves are going to be really nice added to a salad, or again like sandwich, or pretty much, you know, throw them in a pasta or stir fry. Really, they just add a little bit of that like young, sweet beet flavor that's not too overpowering. And with the carrots also, you can see that some of our carrots are growing pretty thickly together. So we're going to want to go in and just start to pull out some of the carrots that are growing really close together. And then the carrots that are remaining are going to have plenty of space where they can grow and get big.
Here we have a cabbage moth. It's this little white moth flitting around. They will lay their eggs on brassicas, and these green worms hatch and eat your plants. So these are something to watch out for. If you can catch them, that's great. They're very hard to catch. And otherwise you can just watch for the worms and get rid of the worms when they hatch. I just wanted to point out here we have a pretty good pile going here of weeds from the garden and some other organic matter. So next week we're going to actually start turning this into a compost pile, and we're going to do two methods. We're going to do just a pile in the garden, and then we're also going to try and get those bins going that we had showed you early on in the season.
So here we are in one of our raised bed gardens. And this one is kind of a mix of pretty edible flowers, some herbs, and then a few vegetables, just to kind of see how they compare to the in-ground gardens. And this tomato over here has not been pruned at all, and it is growing really well. It's got some pretty decent sized green tomatoes on it. And this one, I'm just going to keep trellising up this nice post that we've got here. And yeah, so putting on a ton of flowers, little green tomatoes. So your raised beds, if you're really nurturing them, you might notice that they're a little bit faster than some of our in-ground stuff. And that's just because, you know, the soil can tend to be a little bit warmer. And if you're watering them super well, then they're just getting everything that they need to really thrive.
And here we are in our other raised bed. We just wanted to point out, we had talked earlier about this bean trellis. And these pole beans are really taking off, and they're vining themselves around the trellis. So this is going to be really beautiful and delicious. It's really fun to grow things that both add to the beauty and that you can eat. So we've got a bunch of things in here that fall into that category. We've got some really pretty red Russian kale. We've got Johnny jump ups, which are also edible. Behind us we have some nasturtium flowers. So we've got all sorts of really pretty edible things in here to add to our, you know, plate, and also just to add beauty to our lives. Well, thanks for joining us again this week, everybody. I think that's a wrap for this week. So don't forget to share photos of your gardens using the hashtags, and also join the Amory Victory Gardens on Facebook and share photos and stories and videos there as well. And as always, put any questions you have down in the comments, and we will keep an eye on those and try and get you answers. Anything else for this week?
We hope that your gardens are thriving and looking as lush and beautiful as ours are, and look forward to seeing what your gardens look like.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
See ya.
We're going to take a look at a few more of your victory gardens. These first three are from Jerry Beach. They're of his protected raised beds. These pictures are from earlier in the season. These next two pictures are from Katie McCormick Johnson. And as you can see, these are current pictures, and her plants are growing really well.